Did you know Sean Diddy Combs once reached billionaire status, only to now face lawsuits, raids, and a public downfall that's unraveling everything? In this video, we'll dive deep into Diddy's explosive rise from intern to icon, and the dark secrets, lawsuits, and scandals that threaten to erase his legacy. Stay until the end. What you hear in the final chapter might shock you most. What do you think ruins more empires? Greed, fame, or skeletons finally walking out of the closet? Drop your answer below, and let's unpack the legend, the mogul, the mess. Harlem Hustler origins. He wasn't born into privilege. He was born into pain. Sean John Combs came into the world in Harlem in 1969, in an era when the crack epidemic was tightening its grip on black communities. His father, Melvin Combs, was a known associate of Frank Lucas, the same Harlem drug lord made famous by American Gangster. When Melvin was shot dead in his car at age 33, baby Sean was only 2. That kind of loss doesn't fade. It gets embedded in your DNA. Diddy later said that moment put a battery in his back. He wasn't just hustling for himself. He was chasing a version of power that had once been stolen from him. The streets taught him that money equals freedom, and fame means immunity. From Howard to Uptown, the intern that outwalked everyone. In college, most students aim for a degree. Sean was already building an empire. While enrolled at Howard University, he worked 3 unpaid internships simultaneously. But the one that changed his life was Uptown Records. That's where he transformed from a nobody to the industry's most feared young executive. He didn't sleep, literally. He was the first one in, last one out, orchestrating groundbreaking parties, styling music videos, and injecting hip-hop with raw, cinematic swagger. Uptown's founder Andre Harrell eventually fired him in 1993, saying Diddy had gotten too big too fast. But Diddy didn't break. He built. Within weeks, he launched Bad Boy Entertainment, and history was in motion. Bad Boy Records. Built on Biggie and controversy, Bad Boy wasn't just a record label, it was a cultural earthquake. Diddy's first major signing was a Brooklyn street poet with a hypnotic flow, Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G. Their chemistry was instant. With Biggie's rhymes and Diddy's vision, they crafted anthems that defined a generation: Juicy, Big Papa, and Hypnotize. But it wasn't all platinum plaques. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry erupted, with Diddy and Biggie on one side, Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur on the other. Behind the glitz were death threats, diss tracks, and paranoia. Diddy's empire was thriving, but the streets were boiling. More money, more problems. Wealth, fame, and excess. By the late 90s, Diddy was everywhere. He didn't just shape the culture, he was the culture. His shiny suits, champagne-fueled parties, and crossover success made him a household name. From launching Sean John Clothing to producing MTV's Making the Band, he mastered the art of turning influence into income. But fame has a flip side. Diddy was sued by former artists for exploitation, criticized for shady contracts, and accused of prioritizing image over artistry. His lavish lifestyle began to raise eyebrows. Jets, yachts, 7-figure shopping sprees. The mogul who once outwalked everyone now seemed out of control. The Jennifer Lopez Club, shooting 1999. December 27, 1999. Club New York, Manhattan. A night of glamour ended in gunfire. Diddy, then dating superstar Jennifer Lopez, was involved in a shooting that left 3 people injured. The chaos that followed was tabloid gold, arrests, paparazzi, and a courtroom circus. Though Diddy was eventually acquitted of all charges, his image took a devastating blow. His protege, rapper Shine, was convicted and sentenced to 10 years. Some insiders claim Diddy threw Shine under the bus to save himself. That rumor still lingers. The headlines didn't just sting, they stuck. Diddy went from untouchable to tainted. The reinvention era. From Puffy to Diddy. After the nightclub scandal, most would have laid low. Not Diddy. Instead, he rebranded himself. The name Puff Daddy was retired. Say hello to just Diddy. It was more than a nickname switch. It was a calculated reinvention. With Biggie gone and Bad Boy cooling off, Diddy pivoted into lifestyle mogul status. He launched the Sean John clothing line, which earned him a CFDA award. He partnered with Ciroc Vodka, eventually turning it into a billion-dollar brand. He starred in reality TV, sold out concerts, and entered Forbes Hip-Hop Cash Kings list year after year. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving in a different lane. He turned tragedy into currency, and pain into power moves, making the band and reality domination. In the early 2000s, Diddy flipped the script again, this time on TV. He became the face of MTV's Making the Band, where he played the perfectionist, ego-driven boss who pushed artists past their limits. Viewers were hooked. His phrases, like "walk to Brooklyn for cheesecake," became meme-worthy pop culture. But behind the laughs were real consequences. Several cast members later claimed psychological manipulation, poor contracts, and broken promises. It was TV gold for Diddy, but a nightmare for some aspiring artists. The mogul image grew stronger, but the criticism grew louder. Was he mentoring talent or milking dreams for ratings? The Ciroc move. How Diddy leveraged liquor into billions. Music wasn't the only lane he mastered. In 2007, Diddy struck a deal with Diageo to promote Ciroc vodka. At the time, Ciroc was nearly dead in the market. But with Diddy's branding magic, club anthems, and lifestyle marketing, the brand skyrocketed. He didn't own it, but he took a 50% profit share, a revolutionary business model in hip-hop. In less than a decade, Ciroc went from unknown to a cultural staple. His fortune swelled. Forbes listed him as hip-hop's wealthiest figure multiple years in a row. He wasn't a rapper with a brand. He was a brand that rapped. Accusations and lawsuits. The shadows returned. Then came the unraveling. As the 2020s rolled in, so did the lawsuits, and they weren't about contracts or royalties. They were darker. Multiple women filed civil suits accusing Diddy of sexual assault, abuse, and trafficking. One lawsuit, filed by Cassie Ventura, his longtime ex-girlfriend, alleged a decade of manipulation, physical violence, and forced encounters. It was shocking. Even more shocking, the lawsuit was settled within 24 hours of being filed. To many, that looked like damage control, not innocence. Other suits followed. Diddy's name began disappearing from events, partnerships, and even online platforms. The past wasn't just catching up, it was bulldozing his legacy. Federal raids and the empire under siege. Then came the hammer. In March 2024, Homeland Security raided two of Diddy's homes, one in Miami, the other in Los Angeles. Helicopters, armed agents, and viral footage of his sons being detained on camera sent shockwaves across the internet. The raids were part of a federal investigation involving alleged sex trafficking, drug use, and other criminal activity tied to Diddy's inner circle. The headlines read like a script from a Netflix crime series, but this was real life. Brand deals collapsed overnight. Former allies distanced themselves. The man who once controlled every narrative could no longer control his own. When the feds come knocking, even billionaires answer. Industry backlash, silence, scrutiny, and separation. For decades, Diddy was hip-hop royalty. But after the lawsuits and federal heat, the silence from the industry was deafening. His name was scrubbed from events like the Grammys and BET Awards. Collaborators, many of whom once praised him publicly, stayed quiet. Ciroc's parent company Diageo severed ties, citing breach of contract. He went from trendsetter to liability. Even streaming platforms began quietly limiting his exposure. A mogul once hailed as a pioneer was now being shunned in real time. In an industry built on loyalty, nothing moves faster than self-preservation. The Cassie fallout, one case that broke the dam. Though there were multiple lawsuits, one changed everything: Cassie's. Her suit wasn't just shocking, it was graphic and specific. It alleged over a decade of abuse, surveillance, and control. The fact that she'd been by his side in public, smiling and silent, made the claims even more haunting. Diddy's immediate settlement was a red flag to many. If the accusations were false, why settle that fast? And if true, how deep did it really go? Her story opened the floodgates. Other women soon came forward. Sometimes it takes one brave voice to crack an empire wide open. The power of image. When perception becomes prison, Diddy built his empire on image, lavish lifestyle, loyalty to his artists, the aura of invincibility. But now that same image is caging him in. Public trust is shattered. Every past photo, interview, and lyric is being reanalyzed through a new lens. People remember the cheesecake walks, the club shootings, the intense control over his artists. But now, it all feels sinister. The narrative flipped. His flashy confidence, now called narcissism. His business deals, exploitation. When the world turns on you, your legacy becomes evidence. The Take That era. manipulation, or mastery. Take that, take that. Diddy's iconic catchphrase became a symbol of hustle. But many artists say he took more than that. From The Lox to Maze, several bad boy artists have accused him of withholding royalties, locking them into lopsided contracts, and prioritizing profits over people. Maze claimed he was never properly paid. The Lox famously demanded their publishing rights back. These weren't isolated complaints. They painted a consistent picture of control masked as mentorship. Diddy called it business. His artists called it betrayal. The line between mogul and manipulator just got blurrier. Legacy and crisis. The final chapter or a new act. The most painful part of a downfall. Watching your empire forget your name. Diddy once stood alongside Jay-Z and Dr. Dre as hip-hop's holy trinity of moguls. Now, his name is whispered with caution, if at all. His past achievements, revolutionizing hip-hop, creating wealth, influencing culture, are being buried under allegations. So what now? Is this the end of the Diddy era, or will he stage a comeback like only Diddy can? In entertainment, redemption arcs are rare, but not impossible. But sometimes, the world doesn't wait for your next act. It writes you out. The internet turns. From memes to movements, Diddy once controlled the media narrative. But in the digital age, control is an illusion. The minute the lawsuits dropped, social media exploded. Memes mocked him. Former clips resurfaced, like old interviews where he bragged about control, money, and power. What once seemed motivational now felt menacing. Even his iconic moments like "can't stop, won't stop" were flipped into dark jokes. Twitter threads became timelines of alleged abuse. TikTok turned receipts into reels. Diddy was no longer a mogul. He was a trending cautionary tale. The culture that once lifted him turned him into content. Family under fire, sons, silence, and the burden of a name. No empire collapses quietly, and this one dragged his family into the fire. When federal agents raided his homes, Diddy wasn't there, but his sons were. Videos of Justin and Christian Combs being detained in front of flashing lights and cameras went viral within minutes. It wasn't just a legal matter, it became a generational stain. What's it like to carry a last name that's suddenly synonymous with scandal? What happens to your identity when your legacy was borrowed from your father's fame and now tainted by his downfall? Sometimes, fame is inherited, so is the fallout. Diddy's future, redemption, exile, or erasure. Diddy hasn't been convicted of a crime, but his future isn't just about courtrooms, it's about culture. Can he re-enter the public space? Will brands, fans, and platforms ever welcome him back? Or has his moment passed for good? He's tried to stay active on social media, posting vague affirmations, encrypted videos, but the public isn't buying it. The silence from former collaborators, the blackballing by brands, and the open cases hanging overhead suggests one thing: the man who once owned the moment may never get another. Legacy rewritten. The mogul who couldn't outrun the mirror. Diddy's story was once the blueprint for success. A poor black kid from Harlem who built an empire with hustle, charisma, and unmatched work ethic. He gave us anthems, fashion trends, liquor brands, and unforgettable TV. He shaped culture. But the same ambition that made him rich may have made him reckless. The same drive that inspired millions may have driven him into darkness. Now, with lawsuits, raids, and silence closing in, the question isn't whether he'll fall, it's how far. And when history tells this story, will it say Sean Combs was a visionary who lost control, or a predator hiding behind power? Because in the end, the empire you build is only as strong as the truth you bury.